let's get into this episode. Shorty and I had a great time. We talked about a lot of stuff. It is time to dump the box.
Yeah, it looks like they're...
We don't have time to sit around and look at dogs on that GPS, Shorty. We're trying to run a podcast here.
Yeah, don't let the hunting get in your way.
Yeah. We've got to be Insta famous, take a lot of pictures, do a lot of videos, and then if we get time to hunt after that, then...
Right.
But we got to keep the public image up.
That's right. Public first.
Yep. We got a big announcement for Houndsman XP, and especially for our listeners. Shorty Gorham is now a member of the Houndsman XP team. Welcome aboard, Shorty.
Man, it's good to be here, Chris. Got to be on the podcast a time before and enjoyed it. It's something I've always, well, not always, but since podcasts have become kind of the thing, thought about doing, but didn't really have the desire to try to do it all by myself. And when you and I discussed the possibility of coming on board, I jumped at the opportunity. So glad to be here.
Well, okay, so you were on the podcast before, so how has being on that first podcast changed your life? I noticed that in your recent Instagram photos that Ridge has clothes on now.
Yeah. Well, things just got so much better after the podcast financially for me, just things just started coming my way, and I could actually afford diapers and clothes for my little 2-year-old. So, it was absolutely life-changing. I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, you had a couple Instagram followers before the podcast, and now you're up to, I mean, you are Insta famous. You got like, are you up to 500,000 yet?
Not quite, yeah. No. Nope, I'm about 500,000 short.
Well, Shorty, we're out here at these Bobcat hounds at 4 a.m. and trying to bush an early morning cat.
Yeah, it's South Texas gets warm, so we usually start. Well, either start in the evening time and hunt through the night, or start pretty early in the mornings down here. This time of year, we're into March right now, but by 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, it can be pretty warm already. So we got to get an early start down here and try to get one in the tree. It's also not just the temperature, but your humidity and everything is going to be a lot better this time of morning. So we're kind of optimal time.
So we're on the move, hunting bobcats in South Texas. And so I just want to talk a little bit about, you coming on board with Houndsman XP. We've already recorded a couple podcasts while we've been down here with some of you've got a lot of access. You have access to some pretty legendary houndsmen in the Southwest here. And that's one of the reasons why we thought this was a good idea to get you signed up, get you under contract, and those two guys we've already interviewed. Those are going to be great. Those are going to be great episodes.
Man, we're in dog country, so there's a lot of game down here, and things are a little bit different. We're in real dense brush, which a lot of people have dense brush, but a lot of this brush is
this is brush,
thorny, and just there's a lot of things that kind of force you to do things a little bit outside the box down here. And I said it before, everywhere has its challenges. That's just a fact in dog hunting. Is everywhere you hunt is going to present some sort of challenges. But anyhow, there's a lot of dog men down here, and I shouldn't say a lot, but there's good dog men down here that have been doing it a long time and handed down their experiences to the younger generation, and that's something that you and I had talked about. Like, let's get the younger generation involved in doing some podcasts. But those two guys, yeah, I feel like we set the bar pretty high with those. You're going to expect a lot of me in the future. And some cool podcasts like I won't let the cat out of the bag, but the first one we did, and I don't know how we're going to release them, but something really unique. I know when you and I first talked about, or I discussed with you what I wanted to do, you were looking at me like I was crazy. And when it was all said and done, I feel like you understood why I wanted to do that podcast. And so hopefully we get to do more stuff like that, just because of the unique situations we're in with so much game and having to do things a little bit different down here. We'll get to open people's eyes to a little different way of doing things.
Well, why did you want to look at the younger generation houndsman? What piqued your interest about that?
Well, a couple reasons. One, I remember the struggles that I had when I first started out. I didn't have anybody helping me. Just kind of learned it on my own. Later on, I got a lot of help, and boy, it really changed things. But I think the younger generation, even if we're getting to talk to somebody that doesn't know everything there is to know about houndsmen or about being a houndsman, they're going to have some good questions and bring up some struggles that they're having that I want the younger generation to realize that, hey, you're not struggling alone. Like, everybody goes through these hard times, and even as a houndsman that's been doing it for a long time, you're still going to run into struggles. Your pack's not always going to be perfect. There's always going to be adjustments. Might raise a litter that doesn't work out like you thought they were going to, and they present some different struggles. But just that they're not in it alone. The other thing is, trying to, as you say, preserve, promote, and protect. And the only way we're going to preserve it is by introducing the younger generation to it. And if we don't keep them involved and keep them hooked, we're gonna lose it completely. And to be honest, podcast is a relatively new thing. I think our older generation is maybe not tuned into it quite so well. Might not know how to download the app, and that's going to be the core listeners of any podcast is the younger generation. So
yeah, and when you say that about tech stuff, I learned something this week with my drive track. I couldn't get my Alpha handheld linked up to my drive track, and I've talked to Garmin, I've talked to sales reps, I've talked to the dealer. I talked to everybody about how to do this, and you had a younger houndsman show you.
Yeah.
Show you how to hook that thing up, and so they're more techy, and this lifestyle changes all the time, and the days of dropping hounds and listening for your hounds is over, and there's some guys that can still do that, but with places where hunting getting smaller, we're relying more on some of this technology stuff, and you got to admit it, man. I mean, my son doesn't even hardly talk on the phone. He'll be 20 here in a month or two, but he doesn't even talk on the phone. He can whip out a text message or an Instagram, or a Snapchat faster than I can even pull up my text box from my daggone iPhone, but that's just one aspect of it.
Yeah, you look over and I've got a 13-year-old daughter as well. You look over, their both thumbs are just going as fast. Reminds me of
talking to you and looking at something else and sending a text.
Yeah, or 2 or 3 different conversations at the same time. Yeah, it's a
crazy,
fast-paced world we're living in right now. And
but I think a lot of times we confuse age with experience. There's a lot of houndsmen out there that are half my age that are hitting it. I mean, they're getting after it. There's a lot of really good, accomplished houndsmen.
Yes.
You've been in it since you were. If you're hardcore, a few years, and you're hitting it hard, and you're paying attention, 10 years into this game, there's some houndsmen that I know that have got more on the ground experience than houndsmen that have been in it for 25 years. They like hanging out, and they like telling the stories, and they like the environment. But man, some of these younger houndsmen and women, I mean, they're getting after it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I think there's a lot of good dog men and women down here. Is there's, you've got to look at the country now. Everywhere we go is ranch country, and there's a ton of game. And if you're a young person with desire and manners, you can get access to a lot of country. And that's down here. It's private country. There is no public land. So you have to, and that's why I say manners. You have to be able to get along with landowners. But if you can, talk to landowners and they know you have a good reputation, you're not out doing shady things, they'll let you on their places because they want the hogs gone, they want the cats gone, they want the coyotes gone. And so a young person with desire can get a ton of experience in really no time at all down here. I know some real young kids that are hunting hogs and stuff, and we're going to talk to them in some later podcast. And man, they're hellacious dog people already at such a young age. It's really cool to see.
Well, you work in a business within the PBR. You deal with those 19 to 25-year-olds a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear a lot of people say, the younger generation, what are we going to do? A lot of hand-wringing, a lot of memes on Facebook. The new generation is lost. What's your experience?
Man, I think it's a little bit of everything. It's all in the way they're raised. And the one thing I will say about the young guys of the PBR is, I remember the very first time we went to New York City to perform Madison Square Gardens, and all of a sudden New York was filled with cowboy hats, and the people were looking around like, what the heck is going on here? And they would even ask, like, why are there so many cowboy hats? What's going on? And we would tell them, but what blew their mind was these young guys would walk up and open the door for a lady, and they would look at you like, what are you doing? And these guys, go ahead, ma'am. Oh, don't call me ma'am. No, ma'am. It's it's all out of respect. It's not about your age, and it blew their mind. And now when those young guys show up in New York City, everybody's eyes light up because they see something they've never got to see before, and so it's just a culture, and I think a lot of dog men and women come from that culture. It's not that fast paced. Everybody's got something to do so fast. It's the being polite to others and opening doors and saying yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. So I think there's a lot of hope. I think it's just, it's
how much responsibility do we as houndsmen have to mentor the younger hunters?
Well, I mean, if we want to keep our sport alive, we've got a lot of responsibility. We're the ones that have to teach these guys not only how to treat others and get country for ourselves to hunt, but for instance, I've got a neighbor that dogs ended up on their place, and the landowner was okay with my dogs being on their place, but a guy that had it leashed came in there, and he was mad that the dogs were in there, and I apologized, and he was quite honestly being ignorant over the situation and cussing and screaming and this and that, but he had a bad experience, and some young guys that didn't have control of their dogs, and I could have stopped my dogs at any time. There was a lion in the area, and I knew it, and I thought possibly they were trailing a lion, and this guy was a cow, raising cow-calf operation, and so anyways, but these other guys, they had their dogs had attacked one of his calves, and he'll never forget that. And that's something I think, our responsibility as houndsmen is teach these guys, hey, we got to have control. We can't let that happen. And I assured him, hey, if you don't want dogs on your place, my dogs personally will not touch a calf. I was with them the whole time. But if you don't want dogs on your place, I understand. It won't happen again, and
Yeah.
he was okay with it. But I think it's, we got to teach him that. But then, too, something that...
Well, what would have happened if you... And this is something that I think is a good segue here. Not really a segue, but you brought up a good point. You got a landowner that didn't want you there. And I know when I was younger that I probably wouldn't have had the self-control to realize, one, to control my temper, but one, realize that I'm the one that did something wrong here, not the landowner. And I remember a houndsman, an older guy than me, and he was telling me about a similar situation. And he gave me a good piece of advice. He keeps his head, he looks at people, and he says, well, if I'm going to be treated like that, I'll never come back here again.
Yeah, you stun them with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. But yeah, and it was hard to keep my
I'll tell you one thing
composure.
I've noticed about younger hunters and older hunters too. When you start out, you're motivated, you're hard charging, you're not afraid to knock on that door, you're not afraid to get places to hunt. You're just motivated to get that done. And then as we get older and our traditional spots that we fell in love with change hands, we lose the spot, they put a new house in, they break up the ranch, whatever it is, instead of going out and finding new spots as an older houndsman, a lot of times we just sink back into it and say, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
You can't find any place to hunt anymore. And that's just simply, it is getting tighter.
Sure.
But there's something to learn there from that younger houndsman that maybe if I was a little more motivated, maybe if I wasn't so self-absorbed into trying to hang on to the past and hunt this one spot that I fell in love with 30 years ago, there might be another spot I could hunt. And these young guys aren't afraid to go out and find it.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a chance that you can, just because it changes hands doesn't mean that you can't ever hunt it again. And that's something like this particular place we're hunting on right now. The people who got me on this place were the leasees, and they've recently lost the lease, but they had the hunting lease, and
Right.
and that's kind of how it works down here. Somebody, if the landowner doesn't want the hunting, they lease it out. If they don't want the grazing, they lease it out. And so the landowner has a ranch manager, and he looks over everything, and so the leasee lost the lease, but the ranch manager, I've always done a good job. I've always taken care of things. If something's out of place, I call him. I
Right.
let him know, what yesterday we had come to a gate that was open that we didn't think was supposed to be open, so we called him and told him the sign that I'd seen. There were some cows had been on the other side of the fence, but I didn't think there was any and whatnot, and just take care of your landowners, take care of your ranch managers. And so the landowner, talking to a good friend of mine, he'd asked him if I was still going to get to hunt here, and the landowner said, if the new leasees don't agree to have Shorty out there hunting, they're not going to be the leasees. And so I've got a relationship with that landowner now where I'm going to be welcome on this ranch no matter who leases it. So it's very important to take care of your landowners
And you just did that by caring.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it boils down to. You see a gate open, you're like, man, I don't think that gate's supposed to be open. And I don't think there's supposed to be cows in here. Just small things that shows the landowner and the ranch foreman, you know, Shorty's not just out here using and abusing my property. He actually is paying attention. He's another set of eyes. I mean, and they don't have to pay you. They don't, you know, you're not getting a paycheck. You're just here, and another set of eyes, and you get the benefit from hunting. They get a benefit from having another set of eyes on their property.
Yeah, you know, and that's and it's not, doesn't even have to be a gate open. I'll ask them, you know, hey, where's your cows at? Well, they're in this pasture, but I think I'm missing a couple, and they'll be in that other pasture. Well, if I see them in that pasture, I'll call them and say, hey, I saw, you know, black cow and red cow. They're down in this creek over by this, and so that they know where to go to get them. And man, that it does wonders.
Right.
And it's so simple. It's picking up the phone.
Right.
Just like knocking on that door.
That's right. Yeah. All you got to do is just pay attention and think about the little things. I mean, and you can't do that if all you're concentrating on, and this is probably the lesson for the younger houndsman, is this is a big experience. You know, there's a lot of parts to this thing, and if we're going to be successful, we got to pay attention to some small stuff. It's not just about catching the game. It's just not about your hound being out there and you being out there. If we're going to be successful and maintain this lifestyle, we've got to pay attention to the little things that really matter, because a lot of times the little things are the most important things.
That's right. You know, and somebody might be listening to this right now and say, well, we've got a ton of public land. That doesn't matter to me. But it does, because believe me, if you piss off enough tourists or bird watchers or deer hunters, they're the ones that are going to squawk, and they're the ones that are going to bring up issues that we don't want to have to fight. They're the ones that want to get you off of the public land, so that while they're watching the birds, they don't have to hear a dog barking, or, you know, and so it's easy to create small problems that we don't even realize we're creating, and to avoid it, it's simple. Be courteous.
And it's easy for those small problems to turn into big issues and things like that. It takes 10 seconds when you meet a car on a public, you know, when you're on the National Forest public land, to think about it, raise your hand, smile at them.
Yep.
You know, it takes 2 minutes to stop and roll your window down and have a short conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that person may never become a houndsman or be involved in this lifestyle, but now they've put a face with something. They remember your dog. They remember the positive experience they had. You know, if you run them off the road like what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. This is our forest. Blah blah blah. Then, man, you just helped. I mean, you loaded the gun and handed it to somebody and said, "Hey, shoot us down."
That's right. And you know, and we get to feeling that way. I remember I was hunting some public land in New Mexico, and a guy that lived right there. He was a houndsman, and he felt like it was his forest because he lived right there, and he was mad that I was there, and I politely told him, I said, I'm a public landowner. I pay taxes. I own just as much of this land as you do. And after he thought about it, then he cooled off, you know, but it's easy to get, you know, in that mindset where this is my country. What are you guys doing here? You know, but it's not. If they're, I don't care, you know, if they're bunny hugger or another hunter or whatever, they own just as much of it as you do. Be nice to them. Yeah,
the first tenet of the North American model for wildlife conservation is wildlife is a public trust.
Yep.
You know, should be held in public trust. So that means that even, I can't remember, maybe never, I don't think my wife has ever had a hunting license. She's hunted with me on our property where she's license exempt a time or two. But as far as She doesn't know, if you're looking at it from dollar-wise, she doesn't own a square inch of public ground, except the fact that it's public.
Right. She pays taxes.
Yes. So she has just as much right to be there as I do.
That's right.
And getting back to the houndsman feeling that way, I always like the way Calvin Redhouse looks at it. Calvin's a Navajo, and we're not going to go down the path of, social injustice to the Native American people, but he hunts on the Navajo Nation reservation, which is open to public hunting. And if he goes down the road and he sees somebody like me from Indiana, I don't have any investment in that property at all.
Mm-hmm.
But Calvin will see another houndsman out there, and his attitude is, hey, have a good time.
Yep.
I've seen it. I've been with him when he's done it. Hey, you guys are hunting up here, have a good time. Now, what he does do is he self-reflects, and he's like, okay, you might have beat me here today, but you're not going to beat me here tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's your job. If you're, no matter what you're doing, if you're in business, your job is to get up earlier than the competition and get the job done before they're there, work harder, work smarter. That's anything. If you want to be successful in life at anything, you better beat them to the punch.
Yeah.
But I like to think of Calvin Redhouse as a hound hunting sensation from the Navajo Nation.
That's the new tagline. Oh, yeah. And that's a perfect example of what we were talking about before about the younger houndsman. Calvin has not been a houndsman that long. He was in the Marine Corps for 10 years.
Yeah.
And so the last maybe 5, he's actually been a houndsman on the Navajo Nation. But that guy hunts like a mad man.
Well, and thank you, Gorman. I'm a huge fan of military men and women and just the structure and the discipline that you get out of the military. It doesn't hurt you in anything you do in life. And, that guy's got it. You could see he hasn't been doing hunting very long, but he's a student of the game. He works his butt off at it, and it shows.
And he gets out there and gets his boots on the ground.
Yep.
And pounding those Chuska Mountains, and we don't want to talk too much about him because he can get a little bit. I mean, his head swells up and gives me a hard time. And I got to give him a hard time, too.
Might be the fry bread. Because I don't know if you've ever had fry bread.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll make me swell up, too.
Yeah. Calvin's a hoot. I mean, you get, if you enjoy his videos.
Yeah.
Then you would really enjoy spending time on the mountain with Calvin. He's got a great personality, great sense of humor, and don't think you're going to get cut any slack if you go out there. I mean, he will absolutely. If you're thin-skinned and you get your feelings hurt, and you take everything that somebody says personal, you're going to have a hard time with Calvin.
Perfect. I love it. Makes for good times that way.
Oh man, he's a hoot. He won't cut you any slack. So, Shorty, what are your goals for the podcast? You're going to be recording some interviews and I'm not moving to Texas yet.
Well,
so you're going to be down here and talking to some of these legendary houndsmen solo. What are some of your goals?
Well, just kind of like I said, just shed new light on there's different ways to do things, and no way's wrong. That's the thing is if you want.
There are some ways that are wrong. I would argue with you on that, but go ahead.
Well, in some sense, but there's no wrong style of hound. There's no however you want to hunt that way. Like do what you please. Do
as long as it's ethical.
Exactly. That's
You know?
what I mean. There's no
Don't be shooting holes in the boat.
right.
You know.
Right. But as far as your method of hunting and what style of hounds you like, don't let anybody tell you it's wrong. Now, you may or may not be catching the amount of game that everybody else is, but if you enjoy the dog and you enjoy hunting that method, you know, I've got some friends that quite honestly don't catch a lot of game, but their whole deal is it's their therapy. They go out to hear the dogs bark, and they don't care if they're chasing a rabbit, a hog, what. They like just listening to the dogs, and it's soothing to them. It's not my deal. You know, my deal. I'm try to micromanage my dogs and try to have the best dogs in the country just because of what I'm doing and whatnot. But I don't look down on the other guys for what they do, because that's what they like to do, you know, and they're the ones feeding them.
Yeah, hunting's a personal experience.
Yep.
You know, it's a personal thing that the person doing it has to be able to draw out their own rewards from it and put their own values on what hunting means to them.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest mistakes that are made is passing that judgment or trying to tell people what the values should be within their own personal hunting experience. You know, if you want to have a bunch of wild hounds and don't break them off deer and if you're not deer hunting with hounds,
right?
But I mean, if you're a coon hunter and you don't pay attention and you're just out there turning a dog loose and you just like hearing them bark, and you know, more power to you. Doesn't mean that you're going to have a whole lot of hunting friends that are trying to break young hounds, because they're not going to turn loose with a trashy hound.
Exactly.
So you got to have some expectation in that too, and there are some things that older houndsmen, we need to be mentoring these younger people, because you can't have just wild, crazy, run the country, go wherever you want type hounds. There is value in maintaining the lifestyle by having a hound that is well mannered and you have a handle on, and you know, you don't want them in the next ranch if they're not supposed to be there.
Yep.
Because that's going to be more harmful.
And that's something to consider when you're what style of hound you like. If you're hunting small blocks, you might not want to get a dog that ranges out there too far.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, you know, I think there's so many good hunters down here in this area. I think it'll be fun just getting to talk to a lot of new people, and I'm not just going to stay in South Texas. I do travel a lot, so I'll get to go a lot of new places. But main thing is just keep it interesting and keep the young generation hooked, and hopefully answer a bunch of their questions. You know, that's something I think is super important. We can talk about all these things, talk to the older guys and talk hounds, but we don't always do a fantastic job about answering questions that these younger kids may have. That's my goal, is to do a better job of trying to do that. So that these young kids not only can listen to it and entertain themselves while they're doing whatever it is they do when they listen to their podcast, but they can get some information out of it that's going to help them become a better houndsman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've reformatted the podcast a little bit too, where, you know, we're using that pre-roll time to answer questions that come in. We get a strike.
Say a command.
I believe I heard a dog bark.
Yep. See what happens here. But we're going to reformat this thing a little bit and do a better job as a podcast of addressing some of this stuff. And there's podcasts out there now that are not hound focused, that are starting to talk about hound hunting and hunting with hounds. And I've listened to some of these, and they get it wrong. You know, They don't have the experience to be answering that. So we want to provide a place for people to get answers from experienced houndsmen.
Right.
You know, and I think the other platforms and podcast content is excellent, and there's things you can glean from there. But our podcast is always going to be about the houndsman's story.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think it's very important, and that comes from a lack of experience. You know, you take somebody hunting, you know, just a hunter bought a hunt from a houndsman and went and what they may be telling on another podcast is their one experience, you know, and that's something that you know, to them that's what hound hunting was that one experience.
Yep.
Where, you know, the houndsmen that are out there pounding the ground every day, those are the ones that could tell the real story. And so not sure if you guys can hear that or not, but we got a cat going here right by the truck. So pardon me if my focus isn't 100% on what we're doing right now on this podcast.
I told you we don't have time for this hunting stuff.
I know. Good thing is the dogs are only, 50 to 100 yards right now. So
yeah, and they're in that brush lighting it up, or they were.
Yeah, we just got a little loose right now, so.
We're both distracted.
Yeah.
Looking at the Garmin.
Yeah.
So tell us about this style of hound you're hunting real quick. And we just kind of a recap. We talked a lot about it in the first episode you were on, but you know, let's talk about this style of hound real quick.
So in South Texas, we found that the running dogs, the foxhounds, work the best on the Bobcats. Again, nothing wrong with the old coon hounds or Southwest hounds. That's what I had when I moved down here. But these dogs, they just seem to have a little better track style to catch a bobcat down here in this thick brush. You know, a pack of.
They picked it up again.
Yeah,
over here.
I've got 13 dogs on the ground right now. You know, and there's going to be a few of those dogs that are kind of closer track dogs, but they don't go track for track. Then I'm going to have some dogs swinging out. A little different terminology that we use down here versus like what your coyote hunters are going to use. What we call a jump dog is a dog that just flat out doesn't go try to grab the track, doesn't swing and try to grab the track. They go way out ahead of the dogs, and they're looking for the cat. And those dogs are not going to bark till they're right behind the cat, you know. So just that track style works down here versus all the dogs trying to take a single trail and stay tight to it. You're not going to put enough pressure on a cat down in this part of the world. That's why these running dogs seem to be the answer to put the heat on a cat down in this part of the country.
Yeah, if you had, from my experience, from what I've seen, Shorty, hunting with you for, I guess we've hunted a few days together now with this pack. If you turn loose a traditional track style dog down here, the brush is so thick.
Yep.
That bobcat will absolutely stay ahead. You'll never put enough pressure on it. If every one of your dogs was a track style dog, then you would never put enough pressure on this cat to catch him.
That's right.
And if you had all swing dogs that didn't know how to slow down and put their head down, then these swing dogs and your jump dogs are going to overrun a lot of stuff and have a lot of loses.
That's right. And that's, you know, that's our job as a houndsman. I think I look at my pack of dogs as if I was a coach of a football team. And so
you get a flag for having 13 players on the field.
Oh, dang, rules.
Yep. When they shot the 3-pointer too, you'd get a penalty.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, I think it's learn your game and what it takes to catch game in your area, and then assemble your dogs accordingly. And sometimes I may sell a dog or something, and it's.
I wouldn't have any of these trashy things.
Me either. That's why I sell them. But it's nothing wrong with the dog. It's just I may have too many track dogs, and they're slowing me down a little too much, or I've got too many jump dogs, and not enough track dogs, or whatever it may be. And I try to keep it all balanced to where it's a real balanced pack, that I've got enough of each style of dog to effectively catch game, and it doesn't hurt a lot of times to have too many of one. The only thing down here that can hurt you is having too many track dogs that are tight to that track.
Yeah.
And so, but
how many do you think you need out of 13?
Oh,
because you normally hunt this many dogs.
Yeah, 14 fit in my truck really well. When they're tired, they can lay down, and everybody has their own bed. And so that's what I usually hunt, because when I go on projects, I'll split them up and I'll hunt 2 packs. And so usually,
when you say project, you're talking about line studies.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second. I want to get into that. Remind me.
Or guided hunts, both, know.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to have enough dogs that I can split them up into 2 to 3 packs if I need to. Typically just 2. But that's why I hunt so many dogs. And 2, down here there's so many things, and I think it's it's true in a lot of places. There's so many things that can kill your dogs out here. Every time you turn them loose might be the last time you see that dog. And so it's easy to all of a sudden, if you're hunting a limited amount of dogs, just what you need, boom, you have one bad accident. Maybe a rattlesnake kills a couple dogs, and all of a sudden you don't have enough. So I always say you got to have too many to have enough.
You've rehearsed this line a lot with your wife, haven't you?
Yeah. Luckily,
you're just a hound addict. Just admit it. You got too many dogs, Shorty, and the only reason you have this many is because you want this many. You've heard that line before, haven't you?
No. I will say mine was well trained. She grew up. Her grandpa was a legendary cat hunter down here. People still talk about him today. Hell of a houndsman. And in this dry climate down here, now he financially had things, very well. Not that he was a rich man or nothing like that,
hard.
but he worked hard and set himself up, and so all he could do was hunt cats, because that's what he liked to do. And he would catch 350 to 400 bobcats a year down here.
Wow.
And that's legendary status.
No
and so
doubt.
And then her father, who got burned out of the cat hunting because his dad hunted so hard,
right,
was a hog hunter and had cow dogs. So first time I visited the ranch, there was 25 dogs down there in the kennel. So that's how she grew up, with a lot of dogs. And so my stepson hunts hogs. My father-in-law's got cow dogs still to this day, and I've got dogs. So
it's part of her lifestyle too.
She doesn't know any different. Since she was a baby, there's been 20 or 30 dogs down there in the kennel. So she has never complained about the hunting or the amount of dogs, as long as we don't try to talk her into going down and cleaning kennels.
Dakota 283 offers you unparalleled protection for your hounds. We're talking about military-grade kennel crates. I got one of these 2-door kennel crates here at the house. It is super heavy duty. It's got slap latches on it that are stainless steel. Easily fits in the back of an SUV, or if you're traveling with a camper shell, it's a great way to keep your dog protected while you are traveling. You just got to check out their Dash series. This is a watering system, and I've used a lot of these portable waterers over the years, but this system is all integrated into one unit. And the way it's designed out of high-impact plastic, the water stays in the tank when you're not using it because you can put a plug in it. Check them out. The 3.5 is also compact enough that I can store it behind the seat of my pickup truck while I'm out hunting when it's super cold. I've had exterior tanks before, and as soon as I go to cold climates, then I've got to figure out how I'm going to get water to my hounds, and the Dash takes care of that. So check out Dakota 283 at dakota283.com, and at checkout, enter the code HXP10 and get 10% off of your order.
You know, my wife never complains about me hunting. I've got a very good, I'm in the similar situation. You know, she may complain about having too many dogs occasionally. And I know how many dogs that I need to keep in order to do them justice.
Right.
For the amount of game I can keep them on and stuff like that. And I'm the type of guy that if I get too many dogs and I can't hunt them because of work schedules or whatever, then I feel guilty.
Right.
So, and she's good about reminding me of that and keeping me on track. But, you know, I was going to make this trip 2 weeks ago and come down here and see you. And she called me. I was 5 hours away from the house, and the weather report came out that, you know, we were going to have some pretty rough stuff. And that's the only reason she called. And it wasn't fair to her for me to be down here, you know, having her chunking wood in a wood stove and trying to keep the pipes unfrozen and, you know, all dealing with everything. So I turned around and drove home, and come to find out, that's the best thing that could have happened.
Oh, man.
You know,
yeah.
down here in Texas is not the place to be 2 weeks ago.
No. And I jokingly say that it's not hell down here, but you can see it from here. And so the term when hell freezes over, yeah, it was a little bit rough down here. We're definitely not set up for that cold weather like we had, you know, and to be quite honest, the hunting was terrible anyways. I hunted a few days in that frozen weather, and the animals down here aren't used to it. In fact, there's
a Freedom Hunters event during.
Yep, I did, and so there's a lot of exotics in this country, and a lot of exotics down here died because of the cold weather. But yeah, we did a Freedom Hunter, man, and it was tough. It was really, really tough. The game just wasn't moving. These cats weren't moving. I thought, being cold, you know, they'd need to eat, keep those calories. Man, I think they just went and bedded down in their. They'll use in this country old badger holes to something just loped across the road. That was a deer. But you know, I think they just got in their holes and hunkered down just like everybody else did. So it was tough. You did a good job by turning around, and that's something, you know, if your partner doesn't complain a lot and you're going to go hunting and they say, hey, I really need your help, do yourself a favor and just put the hunting aside for a day or two and help them, because it'll make your life a heck of a lot easier.
Marriage Counseling by Shorty Gorham.
Yeah.
So we need to do a podcast on Keys to a Happy Marriage by Shorty Gorham.
No, I'm definitely not an expert on that, but mine doesn't complain, and once in a great while she'll hey, I really need you to do this. And
when they say that,
yeah.
When they say that, hey, I really need you to do this.
Yeah.
You need to pay attention.
Exactly. And I still get to go hunting. I just adjust my hunting around what she needs me to do, you know.
Yeah.
If it's take a day, heck, take a day. You know, it's not going to. And that's something I've learned too, you know. I used to think these dogs, you just had to hunt them every day, every day. And I've learned that a day off's not really going to hurt them. If you need to go do some honeydews, go ahead.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yep.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
But she also knows for me, I have to get these dogs out, you know, 3 to 4 days a week. That's That's my rule. So she doesn't pester me about.
Right.
So
we'll make sure that Amanda hears this podcast and hears how grateful you are. And
yeah,
stuff.
she'll say, "You're on a podcast. What? Why the hell would anybody want to listen to you?"
We're getting back to these dogs. We're what do we got going on out here? We got a badger, whole cat.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like, I don't know. Seems to me they may be going backwards, or.
Did you just admit that on the podcast?
Oh, hey, my dogs go backward all the time. They are pretty good about turning it around, but
yeah.
So what down here? Well, I think anywhere. A lot of times these cats walk with the wind, and it's easier for the dogs to trail into the wind. That winds, and it's not windy, but it's just a couple miles an hour, but it's blowing that scent into their face. But it's hard to say because we've been talking and trying to just watch them on the Garmin, and I haven't listened real well to them, so it's hard to say exactly what's going on. But it seems like that track never really got too much faster. So
let me ask you this: from how good are these dogs at locating? Say that cat was 10 minutes ahead of them, or 5 minutes ahead of them, and bushed out there, and he's just sitting up in a tree. How good are these type of hounds of locating game on game that's up like that?
They're pretty good.
They have to be looking at it to tree
No,
it?
no. They'll definitely tree on scent, and that's something these dogs. The common thing that you hear about the foxhounds is that they don't tree and they don't have any nose, and it's just simply not true. It's just that's people who haven't hunted around them or haven't hunted around the right ones. Now, I will say, for some of them, they're not slobbermouth tree dogs. They're not barking 80 barks a minute. They're kind of more of a setback and look at the game type. But
they get pretty wired up at a tree.
They do, and for a while. But they'll, I don't expect them to. My deal is just stay there. Don't leave the tree. If they bark once in a while, that's fine. I think these Garmins are. I don't need them to just bark their heads off. I can find them. I've got a Garmin in my pocket, so as long as they stay there and keep that game up, I'm okay with it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're decent locators. Now, if you went into some huge timber, they would probably struggle. But the one thing about it with the Garmin, you're still going to find them. Watch where that track ends, and that little line just goes to making circles, and go right in the middle of that and start looking up.
As I hunt down here, you mentioned something about bobcats running with the wind. So it's actually pushing that scent out,
right?
Away from where the dogs are.
Yeah.
If a cat runs into the wind, it's going to be carrying that scent to the dog.
Right.
And that's a lot of dogs that I've had experience with, the smart ones. You can cut them, you can cut them downwind, but it always seems like they circle around, they come around behind you because they know that their chances of success are going to be better working the wind. Now, up in our country, you couldn't do it here because it's just there's cover and brush all around you. You could try to cut a dog downwind right here all you wanted, but if you got a dog that's smart, that wants to work that wind, you got to use that to your advantage. Now, one thing I will say up in our country is if you got a dog that doesn't range very well, if you can set them up where they have to run, they will go farther and hunt harder when you're continually cutting them with the wind at their back. You can actually teach a dog to get out there because they'll learn that they need to run, down this fence row, circle of patch woods, whatever it is. So there's a little bit of training tip right there. If you got a dog that's kind of hanging around at your feet, try to send him down a creek with the wind at your back, make him range out there because he'll want to get downwind. will actually put a little more. If they've got it in them, it'll help them range out a little bit. But down here, I mean, man, if you got a dog, if I'd have brought Mongo down here, or he's going to hunt that wind. I could try to cut him with the wind all I wanted, but he's got cover all around him. He's going to go where he's going to go.
Right, yeah. It's different here. It's this thick brush. They if they're going to go far, they got to want to go far. It's just they can't just lope off in a straight line. It's always a turn because there's another piece of brush in front of them. So
yeah,
it's and I've had people I'll bring dogs down there. They'll just push right through that cactus and that. Yeah, bring them. Bring all of them.
Yeah.
And it's until you've hunted in it, you just don't understand.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to hunt a dog that's trying to find another zip code as soon as you turn them loose down in this country.
No.
You get treed out in the middle of that stuff, and you're going to earn every step you take.
Yep.
It is rough. The brush is thick enough. It reminds me of coastal Carolina, only this owl has thorns on it.
Yeah. And I've been places just like you're saying, like where
you hunted Florida.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's definitely brush as thick as this there, but a lot of it doesn't have thorns on it.
Right. So let's talk about we started to talk about. You mentioned doing projects and line studies, and that's what they're running. They're running that rabbit there, Shorty.
Well, they're way behind him.
Yeah, see, that rabbit's already given the slip.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of your experience is unique. Is you've worked a lot of study work over the years.
Yeah, got really lucky, really lucky. And didn't know how much I'd enjoy it. It kind of happened by accident. I had bought a dog from a gentleman out west, and we stayed in contact, and he learned, how many cats we're catching down here and whatnot, and we got to talking, daily and visiting about our hunts and this and that, and an opportunity came up where they needed help, and it was a very, very unique situation. They needed a volunteer to go get a project started, and but it was very, very, very important to have it be very successful, and so just because of political reasons. And so anyways, he asked me to come out and help him, and I did, and luckily it went the way we wanted it to go, and so from there it just kept growing and getting to do more and more work, and it's what I really have grown to enjoy doing. It's really cool. It's one thing to go out, and I think it's I think we talked about it in a podcast we did yesterday. It's not about pulling a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's in doing the studies. You get to go catch a lion, or depending on where you're at, a cougar or a panther, which is all the same animal. A puma, yeah, and put a collar on it, and do some other stuff, scientific stuff while you're on the ground, and measurements and weight and DNA samples and blood test and different things for different reasons, depending on where you're at and what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And
every study's got its own objective.
It does.
I mean, they set goal, and you can correct me if I go overboard or out of place here, but most of these studies have an objective that they're trying to prove or disprove.
Right.
And when I say objective, studies should be objective. You shouldn't go into a wildlife study with predeterminations that things are we want to prove this particular thing.
Right.
And so everyone you work, it could be density, it could be how far the animal travels, how often they circle back into an area after they've been caught, to show movement patterns. There's all kinds of things that you can do with this. The cool thing about it, Shorty, is without hunters and people with knowledge of being able to catch this game, wildlife suffers.
It does.
Because if we remove all the hunters from the landscape, if we we all know that hound hunting is constantly under fire, and we take the houndsman off the landscape where you can't come out and do this, who's going to do that lion study?
Right. And
how are you going to do it?
And there's other methods to capture, a lion, but per man hour spent in the field, it's still the most effective way to capture and get a collar on or whatever you want to do. But it, so it's been fun. And one of my favorite things is afterwards, you wake it up and it goes on, and you get to see that lion again, where if you shot it, that's one and done. You're over. And then one of the cool things about being on the project is I get access to the computer codes, so I get to go watch the locations of those animals after we're out of the area and watch their movement, and so it's super cool. You can tell when they've made a kill and just the different things. So I really, really enjoy that part of it, and that's why I've got to keep these hounds tuned up all the time, is because when one of those occasions arises, I have to be ready, and my hounds have to be fully tuned up and ready to go. You don't want to go do it on a job, because whoever's doing the project is spending a lot of money on you, and it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not a get rich deal, but they have to have a veterinarian there. They have to have just field workers there, and all those people are on some kind of a payment.
So have a biologist.
Yep. You got, every study you're going to do is going to have a biologist involved. They're the ones that created the study and are trying to learn things. So but that biologist is going to have a vet, going to have a couple helpers to help us on the ground once the animal's stopped, and we want to get it immobilized, and so all those people are getting paid, so it becomes very expensive, and those biologists have done this before, so they know when you show up ready and when you don't show up ready, and if you're not hitting the gates at a run, you might not get to do another study with that biologist.
So your job in this project is to catch game. It's
yep.
To catch stuff.
Be effective, yeah.
Yep.
And
so a lot of times the biologists, they may not even be in, they're not riding around in your truck with you.
No.
They're not all packed in your truck and stuff like that. So what's your job once the animal is treed?
Well, basically keep it treed, and no, they do all that stuff, and it's something you don't want the responsibility of. So we, hold it treed. I talk them into the tree. Typically we'll have radios or some sort of communication when they're coming in, and I'll stop them when they need to stop if that animal's getting nervous or something, and just let that animal relax again, and get them in there as quiet as possible. I'll estimate the animal's weight so that they can come in with the dart already loaded. If it's a nervous one, we really need to do that. But and then once that's over, really I can leave. But I like staying and
right.
helping them, and making sure we get that animal out of that tree safely. You don't want an animal falling out. So there's different things. We'll have a catch net, so if it does fall, we can catch it. Sometimes, depending on the protocol, in Florida we had a what we call a crash pad that we put under the catch net. Mm-hmm. So, and then you always have a tree climber there. So somebody's going to climb that tree, put a rope on a foot so that we can let it out of the tree slowly and at a controlled descent.
Right.
And
is that the ideal way to get a cat out of a tree?
It is, yeah. And so, for me, ideally is I get the dogs tied back and when that dart hits it, it'll jump and keep the dogs tied back, and then give it time to go and go to sleep, and then just take one dog either loose or on a leash and go find it asleep on the ground. So,
but you're trying to do this study with the least amount of impact and disruption to that lion's life.
100%. Absolutely.
And everything you're doing, I just think it's ironic that the people that want to look at mountain lions and they enjoy the pictures, if they don't disapprove of you being out there with your hound doing the biological study.
Right.
But you're really not doing anything different than you would if you were hunting.
Exactly.
So it's almost hypocritical and of people to think that because we put this biological tag, it's a study. Oh, okay, well, I'm okay with that. Houndsmen do that every time they turn a dog loose. They're doing the exact same things.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's just, people have a sour taste because they don't understand it.
Right.
And that's the thing. And they know if you're doing a study exactly what your objective is to disturb that animal as least amount as possible.
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. But I think that's houndsmen's fault for not being proactive in explaining what we're doing, shedding a good light, and another thing I think a lot of us are guilty of is putting the wrong pictures on social media. There's a desire to be social media famous in a lot of us, and
Insta famous,
and I think it's easy to put the wrong pictures up there, and we can easily hand the enemy the bullet that's going to kill us. And so,
it's kind of like not everybody. We try to create the narrative or help people create their own narrative of how to talk about hunting and how to talk about being a houndsman. That's what this podcast is all about. Communication is going to be either the effective communication or the lack of communication is going to be. It's what's got us where we're at right now, and it's what's going to determine whether we're able to do this in the future. And there's just certain ways to set up photos and videos that show our lifestyle. What are you looking for? We're hunting. You can say whatever you want.
My little splitter for
your Garmin?
That plugs into my cigarette lighter.
Yeah. I don't know where it's at.
I don't either.
You had it. What's this right here?
Nope. Thought I threw it up here. I live out of this truck, so it's like Easter when you have to find something.
Yeah. You're disrupting a really good philosophical point. I was going to be pontificating and showing all my deep thinking and wisdom. I'm glad you found that.
Eureka.
So, no, I'm getting back to what I was saying. There are good ways to set up photos. When you're trying to sell a dog, for instance, when you're trying to sell a dog, or just taking a picture of a hound that you're proud of. There's nothing wrong with a dog living on a chain.
Right.
Nothing. I mean, I tie out every hound I have. We can't allow people to tell us that that's wrong. And there's true benefits to that. But man, if you're going to take a picture of it, then clean up the dog crap behind the dog.
Right.
Right. And you should be doing that. You should be keeping your kennels clean anyway. But I can't tell you how distasteful that looks. That part of it.
Exactly.
Have a little bit of awareness here.
Yep.
You're putting that out there for the public to see, and with people putting human feelings with dogs at an unreasonable rate. That just doesn't play well. And the same thing goes with, a buddy of mine that takes great Instagram photos and video of truly showcasing the houndsman lifestyle is Jared Moss on Instagram. He shows pictures of his hounds trailing across the side of a mountain, and he shows a deeper. It's not just about catching game.
Right.
It's not just about that part. He's showing the intrinsic values of being a houndsman. He shows pictures of his kids, and there's several out there that do that. I just wanted to give a shout out to Jared because he does a good job of capturing the adventure and the lifestyle and what it means and the romance side of it, the nostalgia and the legacy that he's building for his family, and it's all good stuff.
Well, and
it just takes a little bit of awareness to do that.
Exactly. And to be clear, I'm not saying that social media is not a good thing. I'm not trying to discourage people from posting stuff. I'm saying the wrong pictures is a bad thing. And there's nothing more beautiful than a big old Tom lion and a ponderosa pine, or a bear or a bobcat. Like, they're truly a majestic, beautiful animal, and we should showcase that. And we're seeing something that not everybody gets to see, but the wrong pictures can be very damaging to our sport, and I just think it's so easily avoided.
Well, people will say, but what do you say to the people that say, society's too soft? You gotta. I'm not going to pander to these people that don't know what reality's really like.
Well, I think
because I have some of those personal feelings.
I do too. And what we're doing is not wrong, but we're creating unnecessary battles. We don't need to be, in your face. Let's present our lifestyle in a pretty way, for lack of a better words.
Well, it is a beautiful thing. It's not a wrong word. It's a beautiful thing when this is a beautiful thing that we do.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, we can't forget that there's people with a lot of money and a lot of time that, if seen wrong, something that's distasteful, will spend a lot of money and a lot of their time to fight us. And it's a battle that we don't need, that we don't have to have, and it's simply avoided by putting a good light and good pictures and a good twist on what we're doing.
And since you started the whole marriage counseling section, the relationship. This is a metaphor, or of what we're talking about. Hunting is a beautiful thing. Ernest Hemingway was a hunter, and he wrote about it in a beautiful way. It's not something that we should be hiding from.
Right.
And when you think of a metaphor, the relationship between a man and a woman, a husband and wife, is a beautiful thing. But
can be.
But yeah, a good relationship.
Right.
A successful, Good relationship is a beautiful thing. Pornography has made it ugly. You know what I mean? So, and something that makes people feel that they need to hide. And I use that analogy a lot with people that post things on social media. I'm proud of my kids.
Right.
I'm proud of my family. But for me to take the camera in the bedroom and show you how they got here
Right.
would be wrong.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know?
Yep.
It's not acceptable. And as a hound hunting community, this is a hot topic all the time on social media.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And the other thing, you know, all the time I'll post a picture and somebody will comment, you know, something negative, and I don't back down from them, but I try to explain it, and you know, and explain it in a you know, the thing that I think the general public, non-hunting general public, doesn't know. Just to catch everybody up here real quick, we did take that track backwards. These cats right now are using these dens to have kittens. And I think where we started the track is where it was in its hole, and we took it backwards. So this track is gone. We're gonna keep going. But back to what I was saying is you know, I try to explain it to them like, okay, so hunting is not just people going out and you know, murdering things, as a lot of people try to, you know, call us murderers. And I explained to them that, you know, there's biologists that are professionals that study wildlife, that are paid for by hunters and taxpayers to study the environment, to then relay that information to the State Fish and Game Agency, and then as a group they make a decision on how many of what wildlife needs to be removed to keep a balanced ecosystem.
Yeah, how to effectively manage a resource that users and non-users mutually enjoy.
So we are being asked as hunters by wildlife scientists. You know, they always like to say, believe the science, right?
Exactly. That's the hot
Right.
That's hot topic right now. Follow the science.
So we're being asked by the scientists to remove X amount of game in order to keep a balanced ecosystem and a healthy ecosystem. And when you explain it to them like that, they're like, "Oh, wow! I thought you just went and bought a gun and went and murdered things."
Right.
And you know, so don't back away from it because we're not doing anything wrong, but explain it to them how the system works and why it works that way. And a lot of times that anti-hunter now, they might not pick up a gun and go hunting, but now they understand hunting.
Well, you said something earlier. I think you called it an unnecessary fight.
Yep.
You know, why create the fight?
Right.
And people, again, this is the ego part. You get people that say, you know, I'm not backing down from this. This is, well, Sun Tzu in The Art of War, we used this in a different analogy yesterday. The ultimate form of warfare is to subdue your enemy without fighting.
Right.
So if we can represent ourselves in a way that is tasteful, that the largest part of our public out here that's making decisions for the future of us, because that's what we do in a republic, a democratic republic, is about 85 to 90% non-hunters. They don't care if Shorty Gorham and Chris are out here running a Bobcat.
Right.
But if I misrepresent that in a way that turns it ugly, then they're going to have a problem with it.
Exactly.
So there is a way to subdue our enemy without fighting, just like Sun Tzu wrote, by just having a little bit of sense and being tasteful and painting this thing as a beautiful thing. You know, look at how some of the Instagram social media people are posting, like Jared Moss, and see how they're representing our lifestyle, and then copy that.
Yep.
It's not hard.
No, it's not. It's not. It's just put a little thought before you push that post button. Put a little thought into it, and just ask yourself if you were somebody that was maybe on the fence about hunting, how would you view that post?
So this is what another analogy, and are you making that post because you need it,
Right,
or because our lifestyle needs it?
right.
That's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you posting this to feed your ego? Or are you posting this to show the benefits and to preserve, protect, and promote the lifestyle that we enjoy? Because that should be a question in everybody's mind when they're posting hunting photos on there. If you need it to show it, to justify who you are, then you probably have the wrong motivations.
Right.
And that's just common sense.
Exactly.
But that's what we do. We talk about some of these simple issues that need a little more dialogue put to them.
Yep. And I'm again a fan of posting stuff. Let's
too.
all do it. Because that's what's going to preserve.
We can't hide.
Nope.
Nobody's saying hide.
Nope. And don't back down. But just be tasteful and get our message out there.
Yeah.
And open people's eyes. And somebody might see a really cool picture of a beautiful animal and a beautiful backdrop, and you might spark their interest in hound hunting. But a tasteless one's not going to spark their interest in
Exactly. It. And I've seen several. I've posted photos and be like, man, I'd love to see that. I'd love to be able to see. I've always wanted to see a mountain lion up close.
Mm-hmm.
They get amazed that we get so close.
Right. Yep.
They may never be a houndsman.
Right.
But they're not going to vote against you.
Exactly.
When there's a ballot initiative in your state, you take them out there, you show them, you explain to them. People ask me all the time, the first question I always get asked when I come back from a hunt like this is, oh, you treed 3 mountain lions? Yeah. Did you shoot one?
Right.
Like, with my camera.
Yeah.
I went mountain lion hunting the first time in 1993, and I don't know how many days in the field, not as many as people that live in the West, but I've spent a lot of time in the field and looked at a lot of treed lions, and I've shot one lion.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything wrong with taking mountain lions. Sometimes we as houndsmen, we go the other way.
Right.
And don't. You take raccoons at home, for instance. There are a lot of raccoons.
Right.
We're actually not taking enough raccoons
right
off the landscape.
Because as houndsmen, we want more game to run.
Yeah, we want more game to run, and so we don't take them because we want to be able to run a coon the next night. But in the long run, you get distemper running through them. You get raccoon roundworm. You get all this stuff. So we can go both ways on this. But as long as harvest objectives are being met, but getting back to the point, you take that person out there and you show them that, hey, this is really about this lifestyle: running hounds, training hounds, raising hounds. Just the parts of being in the mountains when nobody else is out there. It's all part of it, and you show them the beauty of that. Then daggone it, when there's a ballot initiative, they're not going to vote against you because you've shown them the good parts of it.
Houndsman XP is very proud of our partnership with the organization Freedom Hunters. Freedom Hunters is a nonprofit organization that takes America's veterans hunting from field to field, from the battlefield to a field near you when you volunteer your time to take America's warriors hunting with you and your hounds. It's easy. Go to houndsmanxp.com, click on the partnership tab, and it will take you to Freedom Hunters. You can go direct to their website to make donations at freedomhunters.org. Support America's heroes. Let's pay it back. Visit Freedom Hunters at freedomhunters.org or go to houndsmanxp.com and you can find them on our website, From Field to Field.
Yep. And so you brought up a good point. and that's a harvest objective. And so let's go the other way for just a minute. If we are not reaching the harvest objective, which is set by the Game and Fish Department and the wildlife biologist, then we're no longer an asset to the Game and Fish Department.
Right.
So they're not going to back us up.
Right.
So we have to play that balance where, we don't need to take everything, but we need to hit or get real close to hitting the harvest objective, or we're not an asset, and they're not going to back us up in the end. So it is a balancing game, and we do have a responsibility to
help them meet their goals.
Exactly, because that's what's going to keep the balance of the ecosystem. Is we got to meet the goals.
When you really look at it, if houndsmen aren't helping reach those goals, those harvest objectives, then why keep it?
Exactly.
Because if there's another more effective way that's going to cause less user conflict.
Yep.
Between an elk hunter and a houndsman, or a deer hunter and a houndsman, or whatever it is, then government is going to always take the path of least resistance.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if there was 5 calls or 500 calls last year in Indiana about, or in any state, about user conflicts, a houndsman being where he's not supposed to be or whatever. But if the juice is worth the squeeze, then they're going to keep backing it.
Right. Exactly. That's why it's important.
As long as we do our part, as long as we're not out there shooting holes in our own boat.
Yeah, and the other, like, if I'm driving down the road and I see a game warden, a lot of people will, dodge them or whatever. I stop and talk to them, and I'll ask them, if I don't
like them.
Well, you've had bad experience with them having to look one in the face every day.
You better believe I've had some real bad experiences with them.
But I'll ask them just, hey, is there anywhere, they know what you're doing. Is there anywhere you guys have been seeing some sign that you need animals removed from?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't tell you, but they appreciate you asking, and
no, we don't.
So yeah,
we don't want to talk to you.
Right.
We just want to put our time in and go home,
collect that check.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah. So, but no, it's easy to do your part.
For sure.
It's hard to be an outlaw.
Josh, that's right. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
There's no rest.
Unnecessary stress.
Yeah. Josh McKellis treaded on some pretty sacred ground in the podcast he was on, Josh McKellis with Big Show Game Calls. And he said this. He said, and I'll get your opinion on it, houndsmen need to do a better job of policing their own ranks. And he put it in this context. When somebody goes out and poaches a big deer or a big elk, they're the first ones to pipe up.
Yep.
Because deer hunters look at it like, man, you have just robbed
right
us. You've robbed the whole hunting public from that experience when you decided to shine that deer at night or shoot it from the truck or whatever made it illegal.
Right.
What's your opinion on that as it applies to houndsmen?
I agree. It's I think we all need to follow the rules or the bad light gets shined on all of us together. And if I'm not going to let you rob me of something that I love doing because you want to do it the wrong way.
Right.
And so, yeah, if I see you doing something wrong, unethical, yeah, I don't think I'm afraid to report it. It's
I'm going to confront you first.
Sure.
I'm going to say, hey.
Sure.
But this,
and if you're going to be ignorant, then
yeah. This was always my take on thing, and I did it with raising kids. Our rule at home is if you're going to be stupid, you better be tough.
That's right.
And same thing goes when we come out here and hunt. If you're going to be stupid, there's consequences for every action. Every decision you make, there is consequences for it. They can be good, they can be bad. And when you make a conscious decision to step outside, we got another track going.
Yeah.
When you make that conscious decision to step outside, then you have the responsibility to deal with the consequences. And we don't want to say I don't want to give the message that I know that I've been involved in the rules making processes for what's legal and what's not legal with hunting for my whole adult life. And I am not going to try to tell everybody that everyone is made with the best intentions or that it's a good decision. I was never a company man that thought, oh yeah, this is the best thing for you. No,
right.
it may not be.
Right.
But that's where we need to get involved to make the changes. Be the positive change that you want to see. Just deciding that you're going to go completely rogue and do whatever you want, that's anarchy.
Right.
That goes against. Houndsmen are the most patriotic people in the world. We see it with our involvement with freedom hunters. We've seen it with my whole adult life. You still play the national anthem at the big events. You still say prayers at the national events. And anarchy goes against every bit of that.
Right.
So you can't be a patriot and an anarchist. If you're a patriot, you believe in the democratic republic system that we have, and you work to be the positive change that you want to see.
Right. You
may have to give up a couple days of hunting a year. You may have to get involved with your hound organization that's run. The president's a guy that you don't really like.
Right.
But if you can be a benefit, you've got to get involved. And so that's the counter argument to, those fish and wildlife rules aren't fair. Well, then work to change them.
Yeah, exactly. And don't just throw it all out the window and go do your own thing, because that's not good for anybody in the end. And the more of a headache you cause the fishing game, the less backup that we're going to have as hound hunters from them.
The hottest determination for making fish and wildlife rules, it's in the top 3, if not number 1. When they're managing wildlife, then one of the hottest issues that the wildlife agencies and the professionals that manage it look at for wildlife is human-wildlife conflict.
Right.
Okay, so take something as easy as a raccoon. How many complaints are we getting from residential landowners about raccoons?
Right.
Are they high? Are they low? Coyotes in suburbs. Are they high? Are they low? Because they still have to answer to the public.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to hunters, one of the top things that they look at for deciding what is going to be legal and what's not legal is user conflict.
Right.
Is this causing more of a problem than what it's really worth?
Right. Yep. And that's easily avoidable. Just do the right thing.
Yep.
And that's where we're at. Is it's the rules are there for a reason. If you don't like them, get involved in changing them.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple as that.
We got on the soapbox there.
Yeah, we did. But I like it. It's all, important information that people need to know. And, and back to policing ourselves. We do need to police ourselves. It's
I see a lot more of it. I really do. You know, and we talk a lot about the negatives of social media on,
Right.
probably spend too much time talking about it. But I'm seeing more and more people, when something is posted, there's a lot more awareness out there in our hunting public,
Yep.
in our houndsmen these days, because I'll see people call them out and say, you need to take this down right now.
Right.
Do not post this. I know people that have contacted me and said, hey, I sent this person a private message, or have you seen this?
Right.
And, so we are doing a much better job. The light bulb's starting to come on. And I think our podcast of not being afraid to talk about things like this have helped shed light on that, really, to some extent.
No, I agree. And it's the growing up. I remember it was always, don't be a snitch. Don't be a snitch.
Snitches get stitches.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't agree with that completely. Yeah, you don't want to just run around trying to tattletale on every little thing that goes wrong. But if you see something that's going to cause an issue,
law enforcement doesn't want that either.
Right.
I knew the guys that were crying wolf.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of it was self-motivated. A lot of it was they were trying to eliminate their hunting competition out there.
Right.
And some of it was, hey, this so-and-so's doing this over here, because what was really happening is they wanted my attention over here so they could do something over here.
Yeah, a little distract.
Yeah, a little distraction technique.
Yeah.
But, yeah, even law enforcement doesn't want a bunch of tattletales out here.
Right.
I'm much better about, when I was working, having the hunting public resolve some of your own issues here. A great example of that is the landowner conflicts,
Right.
Starting about mid-September, people are starting to get out in the woods, hang their tree stands and stuff at home, and guys are walking through the woods, and they look up and they see a tree stand that's 10 yards on the other side of the property line, and you get the call. This calls start coming. It's like, my neighbor's got a tree stand on his 10 yards off the property line, and it's facing my way. I know he's going to shoot a deer on me.
Right.
And my first response was always, have you talked to your neighbor about this? Well, no, I'm not talking to him. That's your job. I want you to go talk to him. And I just tell him, I am not coming and talking to your neighbor about something that's not illegal.
Right.
You two need to work this out. This is not a law enforcement issue. This is a neighbor issue. And if you've got a problem with it, then man up, sack up, take a 6-pack of beer or whatever up there and sit down and get to know your neighbor.
Right.
And work this out.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's, as soon as you started talking about words, I was like, okay, nothing's illegal yet.
Right. And a lot of times that's what it really boils down to. Somebody just doesn't like the way somebody else is doing something, so
Yep.
So they want to cause problems. But,
Yep, and that happens a lot of times in the hound hunting world. If you're the guy catching all the game, you got to be doing something illegal. They're going to tell on you, and it's not always the case. The guy just might be out hunting you.
There's no doubt. It's like the guy that goes to the night hunt all the time. I used to, competition night coon hound events. There was always, I knew those guys that every time they came in from a cast, they got cheated. Well, we got cheated.
Yeah, right.
I got cheated. No, maybe you just got beat by a better dog. Most of the time that was the case.
Yep.
Or and not only that, but maybe you got out handled by the other handlers.
Right.
Because they know the rules better, because they know they've invested a lot in playing this game. So it's not always, you're not always getting cheated. Sometimes you just get outperformed.
Right. Right. Yep. No, and I've actually become friends with a fellow houndsman, and when I first heard of him, I was hunting in his area, and I heard nothing but bad things about him. And anyhow, come to find out, he was just catching all the game, and everybody was jealous and mad at him. And he's a really good guy.
Yeah.
We've become good friends, and so you get a little bit of that too.
What are we doing out there on this track, Shorty?
Well, it's a pretty cold track right now. I've only got 2 dogs open, and they're the coldest nosed dogs that I've got. And
is that Sparkles?
Yeah, Sparkles and Rita. Rita was the one you heard barking at first, and so just kind of giving them some time to try to work it out, try to get it moving. Can go from slow like this to full steam at any second. You never know.
Yep. Get a jump, it's on.
Yep. So these cats this time of year, we're starting to have kittens, and so I was talking about that track earlier, going in a hole.
They're not getting far away from the den right now, are they?
No, they're not. And you can usually tell. Like I think we started the track where it was holed, and my dogs aren't hole locating dogs, and I do know of some people that have had dogs that are really good about it, but we were actually taking that track backwards, and it finally just petered out. But a lot of times when they if you get them jumped and they're going to a hole, boy, it's just a beeline right for that hole. So you kind of get to where
your dogs roll out after they hole one, and they just keep rolling.
Yeah, they'll go and they'll look around for a little while, and then they just come on out. So
the hazards to that, I did a hound that it was a 14-inch drain pipe coming off a pond.
Mm-hmm.
It was about I'm gonna say it's probably about 60 to 70 yards long.
Wow.
Went down the dam of the pond, and it was just the overflow for the pond.
Right.
Next day I was out there with the backhoe digging up the overflow pipe so I could get my hound out of there. So there are some hazards, especially in a lot of bulldoze areas and stuff like that, and that's why a lot of coon hunters and stuff break their dogs off of staying in a hole. Bulldozer piles are horrible.
Right.
There's so many gaps and voids in there.
Yep.
And then once your hound gets in there, they'll keep wedging themselves in.
Yeah.
And I know some people that have never recovered their hounds out of them.
Right.
And then other people that spent a lot of money on a track hoe to come in there, an excavator to come in there and dismantle that bulldozer pile to be able to get their dog out. And then you're talking big expense at that point.
Yeah, we'll have quite a few of those brush piles, and those cats will have kittens in those brush piles down here too.
So it's not always a bad thing that your hound won't stay in a hole or.
Yeah, and and it just kind of depends. If they're not in a hole, you could tell them dogs they just keep hunting until they get that track out of there. But if they just go and hit that spot and it's like they know, they figured it out. They've done it enough times that it's
smart dog.
Yeah, and
there's no reward here for me.
And I walk in there, not so much anymore, but if I ever wonder, I walk in there and make sure I'm finding holes. You're not necessarily going to find the hole, but there'll be holes in that area, and I make sure I find them just to make sure my dogs are being honest and not screwing up and just making a lose and quitting, because I definitely don't want that. But
that's one of the things that's cool about a houndsman. I've heard non-houndsmen say, even give credit to the good houndsmen and say these guys really are more in touch with what's going on than any other group of user group out there hunting.
Yep.
Think about all the things we got to know. As a houndsman, you got to know the game you're chasing. You got to know the habits. You got to know movement patterns. You got to know feeding patterns. You got to know breeding patterns. You got to know all of this stuff. Then you got to know where stuff is at. You know, walking in there and finding that hole, now you've got the experience that, oh, yeah, okay, I know what my dogs did right there because I know there's a den in there.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll mark them. If I know them, I'll mark them on my...
And so we're getting in touch. I mean, honestly, down in this country, deer hunters aren't walking through that brush.
No.
Unless they shoot a deer and they have to recover a deer.
Right. Exactly. And on that being in touch and back to the hunter challenges that we get from anti-hunters. One time I did something and some of you guys might find it pretty cool. I just went to a truck stop and I bought a logbook, trucker's log.
Yeah.
And I filled it out every day. And I filled it out when I went down to the kennels and fed, cleaned pens, everything I did that involved the hounds, I filled it out and I logged my hours. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember exactly what they were, but totaled them up at the end of the year, and it's mind-boggling how many hours we're doing something with hound hunting. And any other hunting group, they can't touch it. They can't come close. I don't care how much they practice their bow hunting, target shooting, or whatever. It doesn't come anywhere compared to the amount of time that we spend hunting. So when somebody says it's hound hunting is unethical, you just turn the hounds loose and go catch an animal, you can actually tell them, you know how many hours? And you can also keep track of your dollars on that thing too. That might get a little scary for some people, but you know how many hours I spent?
I wouldn't want my wife to find the logbook. No,
hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I was tracking the dollars.
Right. Yep. No, it's interesting. It was something fun for me to do, but it does take dedication. It's easy to just get in a routine and forget to fill it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that old saying, if you ever want to become a millionaire as a houndsman, start out as a billionaire.
That's right.
You'll get there pretty quick.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, and just even among, it's a good way to talk to other hunting groups too, because there's a lot of other hunting groups. Deer hunters get a lot of negative press from the hound hunting community. They've earned a lot of it. They've earned some of it. We've helped them in some ways, but they'll even say that hunting's not ethical, or hound hunting's not fair. It's too easy.
Right.
And when I look at this ranch, I know for sure that when we walk into those trees in this brush country and we put the time in out here, I mean, a deer hunter's riding from that bunkhouse,
right,
in that mini truck, out here and climbing up and sitting on a feeder and shooting a deer. And we're not trying to say that's wrong. Go for it, man. That's big. It's like you said yesterday. These deer have made a lot of sorry ranchers successful. Or how do you put that?
Yeah. Well, the kid asked his grandpa why we were spending so much time and money on these sorry deer, and that old timer told him, said, "Son, these sorry deer saved a lot of sorry ass South Texas ranches."
Yeah, there you go.
And it's true, but I would support every method of hunting, whether you're a deer hunter, turkey hunter, trapper, whatever. Because if we go against one form of hunting, we're no better than the antis, because we're helping them to take one method of hunting, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to knock you down one at a time. They're not going to come at all of us full steam ahead. They're going to come at the weakest one, the one that other hunters don't support, and they're going to take them, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, till it's all gone. So it's very important that we support that deer hunter, turkey hunter, rabbit hunter, whatever, just as much as we support our own.
Everybody's always looking for the shortcut, Shorty. I mean, it's just it's trying to find that magic silver bullet, there just isn't one when you're dealing with emotional feelings that want to stop what we're doing.
Yep.
There just isn't. It's a complicated thing, and that's been a really neat thing, a really rewarding thing in creating this podcast, is being able to take people's viewpoints and their experience and put those all together to show how to be successful. You know, if you want to teach a young man how to do a job right, show him what a good job looks like.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
And that's been the very most rewarding part about creating this podcast. And we're closing in on 100 of them now. 250,000 downloads is where we're at right now.
Man, that's too cool.
And we never thought we'd get there. And we get a lot of good feedback on the podcast. But we would like to hear more interaction and more engagement from our listeners. You know, if you think
Where do they do that at?
they can do that on Instagram by direct message, or off our Facebook page by sending us a message. You can send them to our email, and you can go to our website and get all our email addresses. Yours will be up there soon, and we really need to hear that feedback. And if you think we're full of crap, then tell us.
Oh, please don't. My emotions can't handle that.
Mine can't either, and I usually just hit the delete button.
Yeah,
But
right.
no, seriously. Ask us questions. You know, there's a lot of experience in our team, and we have exposure to people. We have access to people that can get the right answers.
Yeah, if we don't have the answer, we'll find it.
Yeah. And
if we can't find it, we'll just make one up. Not really.
Now you sound like a true houndsman.
Yeah.
We're going to strive to give. I think adding you to the team, you know, we have increased our experience.
Not all good. No.
Broadened our base a little bit with, you know, the way you hunt down here is completely different than what many houndsmen have ever experienced. And so it gives you a different perspective. The people that you know down in this country that are hunting can help add to that. And every time we do that, we're adding a block to our foundation.
Right.
You know, we're strengthening our foundation of experience and exposure and getting some different ideas, and it's going to be a good thing.
I sure hope so. You know, and luckily through my career as a bullfighter, I've got to meet a lot of people and a lot of connections. So hopefully I can bring a good solid amount of knowledgeable houndsmen, and it's been cool. And you're probably thinking, how the heck do you meet houndsmen as a bullfighter? Well, a lot of times I'll be at an event and somebody will come introduce themselves and you know, hey, I'm a fellow houndsman. I hunt rabbits over here, or I'm a coon hunter from over here, or whatever, you know, and
Yeah.
So it's been really cool, and looking forward to trying to bring some good content to the podcast, and hopefully entertain the ones that already know it all, and teach the young ones that don't know everything yet a little bit about being successful and have fun all at the same time.
Man, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun doing it, one way or another.
Absolutely.
Definitely, that's the most. When it's not fun anymore, it's not rewarding. It's not always. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. There's some weeks where the last thing I want to do is sit down and put a show together, but it is rewarding.
Definitely.
So, Shorty, let's wrap this one up and let's go catch a bobcat. Let's see what Sparkles and Rita are still out there working on this track.
Yeah, it's pretty cold. I don't think they're going to get it anywhere. We're going to go on to another one. But one of the things before we end, and I'm going to ask you the question. One thing that I know I've already told you, but one of the questions I want to ask everybody on the podcast is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever got about hound hunting?
Mm-hmm. Besides, don't get into it.
Right. Yeah.
The best piece of advice has probably come from older houndsmen is to slow down. Slow down. You know, I've found in my life, in general, you know, it's just like that trip that I had planned that I turned around on a couple weeks ago. You know, if I'd been full bore head, hard headed, gung ho, jumping in the middle of it, then man, I'd have got down here and had a miserable time, and it wouldn't have worked out. When you try to force things, it doesn't work out. So, probably slow down. Maybe overlay that with the old Bruce Lee saying, "Be like water." You know, just go with the flow. You're not going to run through the rock. You got to figure out whether you're going to go over it, around it, under it. So slow down, be patient, and be deliberate in what you do. And I've found that I have a lot better hounds when I don't dictate, when I don't put the pups in a box. And when I say that, I mean just to put hard rules on them. By this age, they should be doing this. All my buddies say that if a dog's not doing this by age, they're a call. So slow down. Take in the whole picture.
It's great advice. Great advice. Slow down.
You want to close this out?
Well, I guess I can. I have to tell the whole story.
Not the whole story.
All right.
You can just say it.
Chris, I got my hounds on the ground. We're out here bobcat hunting, and we got one of yours back at camp. We're going to get him out a little bit later, but
we got two of mine back at camp.
Two of yours.
One's got a bum wheel on him right now.
Right.
Letting that foot heal up.
So, anyways, when these dogs strike a track and cut off through this brush, you follow your hounds, and I'll follow mine.
That's going to be a good deal. That means I'm not going to have to walk through the brush this morning until I get my hounds out of here, Shorty.
I'm not going to this afternoon when we get yours out.
All right. Good deal. Thanks, Shorty.
Adios.